First step in the home buying process. A lot of people think they need to go see a house. They see a house they like, they want to go see it, and that's the first step. It usually doesn't work out real well for anybody.
No, especially these days.
With the way things are happening, when a house that's priced right hits the market, it doesn't last long. So the first thing somebody ought to do would be to engage a real estate professional to guide them through the process.
Welcome to the RE Real Estate Podcast, where we discuss buying and selling real estate in black and white. Here are your hosts, Ben Harang and Clint Galliano.
My name is Ben Harang. I'm here with Clint C. Galliano, realtor. Keller Williams Realty Bayou Partners agents in the Houma Thibodeau area. This is our inaugural podcast where we're going to talk about buyer consultations and the first step in the home buying process. Welcome, Clint.
Hey, Ben. How you doing?
Doing terrific. How you doing, Clint?
I'm doing wonderful.
Glad to hear it. So, first step in the home buying process. A lot of people think they need to go see a house. They see a house they like, they want to go see it, and that's the first step. It usually doesn't work out real well for anybody.
No, especially these days.
With the way things are happening, when a house that's priced right hits the market, it doesn't last long. So the first thing somebody ought to do would be to engage a real estate professional to guide them through the process. Why don't you talk a little bit about the buyer consultation?
All right. So the way I operate my business is I like to hold buyer consultations with buyers that I work with. Generally, that involves with them meeting me here at the office, and we go over their wants and needs. And I try and tease out any particular details that may affect their ability to purchase a home. You know, whether it's financing, specific place that they just have to live near. How many people are in the family, whether they want a workshop or don't want to do yard work. Figure out what they're looking for. And then we talk about the financing in more detail. And a lot of the buyers that I work with already have their financing lined up or they're in process for getting a pre-approval. And pre-approval is key. Like Ben mentioned a minute ago, if you don't have a pre-approval when you're looking at a home and if it's priced right, somebody else is liable to be able to get it under contract before you get a chance to. Even though the market's slowed, if the home is priced right and it's the one you want, there's always a chance somebody could come in and get it under contract before you're ready. So once the buyer consultation is complete, if it's not already done, the next step would be to get that pre-approval from not just one, but I always recommend 3 lenders. That way you can compare rates, fees, terms, because the rate isn't the bottom line on that. And that's all I'm going to say about financing because that's not my bailiwick, but refer you to lending professionals that can help you more on that.
Staying in our lane is key. Everybody do their thing, and that generally gets us to the closing table smoother.
Indeed.
While we're talking about buyer consultation, does a buyer's agent cost you anything?
Yes.
I would not suggest that you go at it alone, a process where you are negotiating with a real estate professional. Because in my mind, you lose before you start when that happens. Better off engaging a real estate professional. There's something called the buyer representation agreement that asked to sign. There's a fee attached to that agreement. Once that agreement is signed, the idea is to make an offer including that fee house. It's really pretty simple when it comes down to it. There's no guarantee they'll pay all or any the fee. But if you ask for it and they don't agree to your offer, you will know what they're paying before you sign or accept a counteroffer. And we'll have a discussion about who's going to pay what and how we get paid. Some people shy away from the idea about getting paid. And in the new world of transparency, there's no hiding from it. So we need to have the conversation. And it's usually pretty painless. And we build it into the house, to the price of the house, like it was built in before red letter day on a calendar of August 7/24.
Yep. It's kind of funny, it's like there are people in different camps. Some will say, well, the seller pays for that. The seller's always paid for that, or the buyer pays for that. And ultimately, you can make any argument you want and justify it however you want. It's the cost of the transaction.
The transaction pays it.
Yeah. It's a cost of doing business. It's a negotiable cost. You may not want to pay for it. If you don't, then you're on your own. That's not an advised route, but some people are at a level of sophistication where, hey, they can represent themselves, but not necessarily being a licensed agent. You don't know the process from beginning to end unless you're extremely experienced in it. So again, reiterating what Ben said, unless you have that information, then you always want to have somebody looking out for your best interests.
Going it alone is really not a good idea. You're going to get into a situation where you don't understand what's happening. You might agree to something that you didn't intend to agree.
Or that you don't understand. You think it means one thing and it's something totally different.
My daughter's a licensed agent, and when I'm doing a deal for me personally, I don't like representing myself because you become emotionally involved in the transaction, and you need somebody to make sure you're thinking with a clear head. Just to kind of give you play the devil's advocate when they need to play the devil's advocate, tell you the truth, so you can make a decision based on all of the information that's available to you to get a more successful outcome.
But that's Ben's 100% right. As when I work with buyers, my goal is to get the buyer in the house at terms that are acceptable to the buyer. I'm working in their best interest. I'm looking out to make sure that things that may be a detriment to the appraisal or a detriment to owning and maintaining the house, that we make sure that those are all straightened out ahead of time. I'm making sure that deadlines are kept. I'm making sure that, again, getting to the closing table without any hiccups, because that's one of the things that a lot of people run into hiccups. And if you don't have a buyer's agent representing you, may not necessarily have the experience on how to deal with that or the knowledge on how to deal with that.
And if a buyer and a seller are dealing directly with each other, there's so many pitfalls that both sides can fall in. If one side has a professional, the other side does not, chances are the one with the professional is going to get a better deal than the one without the professional. And it gets to the point to where you think you're 2 days from the closing and something comes up. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, how do we deal with this? It's probably not something that a professional hasn't seen before. There's a way to handle it. But if you've never done it, you don't know how to handle it.
Taunton Inn has a lien against her, and because she stood at one point to inherit the house, so there's a lien on this house, and so you can't sell it, and so that means, or the sellers had that, and so the seller can't sell it until the lien gets cleared up, and you as the buyer are sitting there, well, what do I do? And ultimately it's up to the seller to get it cleared up. I think you've got a story about something similar, don't you, Ben?
We had a house and a lot, and the house had a clear title to it, and the lot sat in front of the house, facing Bayou Lafourche. Well, people that owned the house thought they owned the lot. Well, they only owned half of the lot. That was a full stop on the closing. At the end of the day, we were able to close on the house, close on a portion of the front lot to access the water while we continue to clear up the title issue that will get cleared up. But chances are, without somebody involved in that deal would have fallen through. Not because anybody did anything extraordinary necessarily, but because there were cooler heads that figured out how to get the deal done. Again, the emotion, part of a realtor's job is to keep the emotion out of it. We're psychologists, we're counselors, we're a lot of things, but people get emotional about buying and selling property. And if we can keep emotion in check, having an orderly, thoughtful, organized process, it helps everybody involved.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes that I've had a bunch of interesting situations with buyers and listings, and some of them were insurmountable just because of the situation. One situation, seller bought a house while she was married to one ex-husband. And let's see how this was. And he did a grant to her, except she was married to another husband. And it was done, the paperwork was signed in Mississippi. And so it wasn't specific to Louisiana. She took the paperwork, filed it with the parish. And so the parish, they said, okay, this document's filed and part of the record now. Didn't check it whether it was the right paperwork or whether it was filed correctly. She never signed it to accept it, which was part of Louisiana law. And so because of that, her next husband, he wound up passing away due to illness. And she was left trying to track down, contact, and negotiate with his children to have them sign off to release his claim to half of the property because the whole situation was handled improperly. Mm-hmm. And that deal wound up falling apart because the children didn't want to have anything to do with her because they kind of halfway blamed her for the condition her dad was, or their dad was in when he passed away. As far as I know, that property will never sell.
You bring up a good point. We had a meeting here this week with talking about who can sell property with successions and people and undivided interest in property means, and if there's a professional involved on the listing side, a lot of that stuff should be vetted out on the front end. I'm dealing with succession right now. His nephew inherited a house, and the succession, people are asking me, has the succession been completed? The succession has not been completed, but niece and nephew have the authority to sell the house on behalf of the succession. Once the house sells, then they can finish with the succession and who inherits what. Other way to do it would be to have a judgment of possession, which is the people that inherit the property to have an undivided interest in the property. I've seen a situation where children inherited mom and daddy's house. The children had IRS liens and liens. If they ever get ownership to that house, they'll never be able to sell it. So for an extended number of years, the attorney, knowing that, did not complete the succession. Succession sold the property, received the funds, and whatever they did with the funds after that was them. But that was a professional handling and knowing how to get it done. Whereas if somebody just walked in and said, do mom and daddy's succession and give it to us, they'd have never been able to sell that house.
Yep. There's always right ways and wrong ways, and ways that make you scratch your head.
And some, there's some property along by Lafourche that, in my opinion, will never be able to be sold. A title problem in the 30s, and I don't know how to fix it. Somebody smarter than me might be able to, but it just too many successions have been left undone, and but it'd have to go back into the 30s to do successions on first one, and then every succession on all of the descendants after that, and the property isn't worth fees and the cost of clearing the title.
And you're looking at 500-700 heirs to a piece of property.
And there's something called a petition suit where you can actually file a lawsuit and clear the title. Again, that takes money.
Yeah.
So.
And is the property worth it?
Right. Okay. Well, let's wrap up our first podcast. Go ahead and throw in your name that you like so we can kind of hear what it sounds like.
Clint C. Galliano, Realtor.
I'm talking about the name of the podcast.
Oh, no. RE Real Estate. Yeah, you got to specify what name. So you say name, I say my name.
I understand. And my name's Ben Harang. And we're in West Park and Homer right now. We don't know where we're going to originate these podcasts from. We can do it. We're now sitting in the same conference room, Homer. We can do this from two different locations or the same location. So we'll see how it goes. Take it from there. So, enjoyed it. Thank you. We'll do this again.
Yep. See you next time, Ben.
All right.
While we may discuss topics such as lending, interest rates, title law, real estate law, and appraisals in addition to real estate sales and transactions, please remember that we are only trained and licensed as real estate salespeople in Louisiana. The information shared on this podcast is for general purposes only and should not be taken as legal or financial advice. We may be agents, but unless we have signed paperwork stating otherwise, we are not your agents.